Okay, we are officially live. Career Coaches on Call. We're back. We had a couple weeks off and had an extra week in the month of July, technically, I guess. Oh, wait, here's Ken. Give me 2 seconds. I click the right button. Hey, Ken, looks like he has a sad face.
Hi. Wow, it does, doesn't it? Let me edit that.
But that's all good.
Let's get your picture in there.
All right, let's do that.
Yeah, you can click the little three dots in your box up there, Ken, and it should allow you to add a picture or edit the avatar. Was that right, Sharla?
Yeah.
All right.
And then it'll just add a picture and you select the one you want.
All right. Let's see what we got.
Let's go. I'm just going to go and make sure we are.
Still got the KS there, or is that gone?
Okay, we are.
No, you're good. Success.
Yay!
Yay! Welcome back, Ken.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I've been, I guess, a little unreliable lately.
Oh, you've been busy and it's summer, but we missed you. Glad to be back. We are live. So I'm just going to turn the reins back over to you, sir, and let you do your thing.
Okay, well, thank you, and hello, everybody. It is good to be back. And I saw we had talked about. I was looking on LinkedIn. There was a theme we were going with based on a post you had made, right, Melanie?
Yeah, I just kind of kept it very open in the sense of like how to stand out in today's job market. I think it's a topic that we've kind of been diving into last couple. I think I don't even remember what we talked about last time. I was going to say last couple of times, but I know we've touched on it. But I figured we could just run with it based on questions, but also wherever conversation takes us.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And it's been so long. Remind me, can we take questions from the audience?
Yeah, we can actually. I will prompt you when we see questions in the chat, and so if you guys, for those that are watching, if you have specific questions that are related to your job search or challenges that you're experiencing, please let us know. We will be more than happy, and we'll let the panel respond accordingly. So drop your questions in the chat, but also if you're watching, let us know where you're watching from and introduce yourselves.
Yes, that is a great idea, Melanie, because we all know, I think, that one of the best ways to land a job is through networking. And so this is a networking opportunity because you never know who can help you or who somebody knows who can help you. So get your name and see about connecting with people if you can. And then again, also, as Melanie said, we're here for an hour. We want to help you. And the best way we can help you and help you specifically is if you ask us a question. If you have something that's challenging you, that you're wondering about, you want to maybe reinforce for yourself, please do put a message in the chat and we absolutely will address it. And in the chat, Gregory, thank you for the congratulations. I appreciate it. I do want to, Melanie, you said I could, so I'm going to just say real quick.
Of course, yes. We, of course, want to congratulate you too, Ken, on the achievement of you publishing your very first book. And please tell everybody what it's about and where they can find it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Well, the book is, it's called What's Trust Got to Do with It? And I won't sing you the Tina Turner song, but that is where it came from, that idea. And the subtitle is Transforming Leadership, Organizational Culture, and the Job Search. And there are 3 sections to the book, one for each of those areas. So pertinent to this conversation, there's a section on job search. And in it, I go through how to use my trust success model, with trust being an acronym for transparency, results, understanding, simplicity, and teams, how to use that to have a successful job search. It's what I use with my clients, and this book will help you with your job search or anywhere, any place you are in your career. So it is available on Amazon. If you just search for What's Trust Got to Do with It, it should come up for you. So thank you for giving me that opportunity to talk about it. So we are talking about how to stand out in this job search. And we all know, I think, that it's a really challenging market with the state of the economy and just the unknowing of what's coming in the future with the tariffs and with everything else going on. So making yourself stand out is really important. So let's go around and have each of our coaches introduce ourselves and give an opening tip. And if we could start with Sharla, you have a new profile picture. It looks excellent. It's good to see you.
That's the old me. The other one was like 20 years old, but I'm always the one taking the pictures. I'm never in front of the camera, but anyway, so
I like it.
Gregory was shocked. He thought he was in the wrong clubhouse room because I had changed my profile picture. I'm Sharla Taylor, a career coach and resume writer. I work with people all over the U.S., but I'm based in Central Florida. And I guess my value proposition, if you want me to practice in front of you so you can get an idea of what one is that you tell who you are and what you do. So I always introduce myself as a career coach and resume writer who loves helping people find meaningful work with the compensation and the work-life balance they deserve, or work-life harmony, whatever you want to call it. I don't think there's really any balance when it comes to work. You spend the majority of your time there. When Melanie came up with this topic, I was really excited about it because, there are a lot of people that are desperately seeking and they're going to extreme measures to, find a job. Sometimes it comes off really well and sometimes it doesn't. For example, there was a musician that created a commercial jingle and the song title was Hire Me. And she was actually going for that creative role in the music industry where she wanted to produce commercial jingles. So for her, that was a very effective way to stand out. But gimmicky approaches like putting resumes on cakes often backfire because they can really appear unprofessional and they don't demonstrate your job relevant skills. In fact, I looked at the resume that person put on that cake, and there's no way I would let any of my clients have that poorly written a resume. And there's other people that dress up like pizza delivery guys or donut delivery people and, try to sneak their resume in that way. I wouldn't suggest any doing those wild and crazy things like that. If you have strategic branding, if you have properly positioned yourself for that future focused role, and you have shown them who you are and the value that you deliver, you shouldn't have to do any of those antics. That's my tip.
I love it, Sharla. And I'm just curious, the woman with the who did the song, who it sounds like in that case it was relevant at the very least.
Yeah.
Was there a job opening she applied to, or?
No, she was just trying to get noticed in the music industry, and she was having a hard time breaking in. I mean, that's a very competitive. Anything, and there's like a 2 to 3% of people who actually want to work in that industry find jobs. And so for her, it was creative and it was appropriate because it aligned with her role.
Yeah, it sounds like it. But to your point earlier, there's the other examples you gave were pretty much stretches and kind of don't
put on a sandwich board and go stand on the street corner. There's a lot better ways.
I'm sure you're right. All right. Well, thank you. Glad to hear you, Sharla, and glad we're all back together again. Alan, how about you?
Hi, everybody. I'm Alan Kirshner. I'm a career coach. I help people with job search strategies, interview prep, LinkedIn profile optimization, and salary negotiation. And my tip is that it's really important to be out there and to have a strong network. You need, typically 70 to 80% of jobs are filled through some type of networking connection. So it's really important to have a network and not do that only when you're in job search, but do that even when you're not in job search, when you're just looking around, or you are even settled with a position, because you never know what might happen. So I think it's really critical to develop and nurture relationships on a regular basis. And I think that can really be a differentiator. One of the people that I've been working with just recently landed a position, and he was having a lot of success in this job search process recently, which, I agree with Ken, it's been a really challenging job market, but he had multiple interviews, and this is only within a short number of weeks, and he got this offer. And most of the success he was having was because he was using his network in order to reach out to people who knew people in different areas. So I think that just using that small sample size of one, it's really important in a more challenging and difficult job search environment to have that kind of network and to really utilize it effectively.
Yep, great tip, Alan. And, I do want to commend you, Alan, because every time I ask you to introduce yourself, your opening, similar to what Sharla said, it's just a very consistent message of what you do. Like, there's no question, we know you help people with job search strategies, resume, interview. And I think that's the kind of messaging that job seekers need to have, something that's just concise, clear, and consistent. So I applaud you for doing that and demonstrating that for our audience. I also want to mention, before I get to Melanie to introduce herself, I think Gregory mentioned something about last time we were talking about resumes, and today we're talking about how to stand out from the crowd. But after we get through Melanie's introduction, I think I'd like to do that, go through the big buckets. How do you stand out? How do you make your resume stand out? How do you make your LinkedIn, or how do you stand out on LinkedIn? And then how do you stand out in interviews? So we'll cover all of that. So Melanie, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. For those who don't know me, I am a former recruiter, and I work with mid to senior executive level professionals, focusing on how to land high impact roles and consulting engagements, combining all of my recruiter experience, personal branding strategy, and LinkedIn mastery. So what is my tip in terms of standing out? I'm going to kind of take this a slightly different direction. I think it's really important to have a strong mental mindset. And I know that that can be incredibly hard and incredibly challenging in today's market, especially, with rejections and not necessarily, getting the feedback. But I recently had to tell a client that I couldn't no longer work with them, because honestly, the attitude of everything that was proposed was pushed back upon. It was like, well, that's not going to work. It was, more of a complaining session. And that's, and my goal is to coach you to be able to land that opportunity. So I think you have to have you have to be in the right mindset. Know that this is going to be difficult, but know too that we can't control the outcome. We can only control certain factors, and those are the things that we've got to focus on. And I think if you really honestly put yourself out there in a different way than what other job seekers are doing, and pushing yourself out of that comfort zone and having those conversations, because I know a lot of people push back and, well, networking doesn't work, LinkedIn doesn't work, and when we get into that stage, we're already setting ourselves behind the curve, to be honest with you. So you want to stand out, you're going to have to push yourself, and you're going to have to push yourself into a new zone. And it's something that all of us actually need to do, every single day. I'm sure, Ken writing a book, that was challenging. Ken's never written a book. So, so there's always something to be learned. And sometimes just taking a different approach or being open to that is going to allow you to have success in that. And we do already have a couple of questions, Ken. So let me know if you want me to pose those questions first before we jump into it. And then we can, or if we want to start the conversation, then we'll come back to the questions.
Well, I definitely want to go to the questions, because that's why we're here, to help the audience. But before we do, I do want to comment on what you said, Melanie, because I think being confident and being positive is also a way to stand out. Yeah, there may be other people doing the same, but if you're not coming across that way, you don't stand a chance. You've got to be positive, you got to believe, and you got to try. Alan mentioned 70-80% of jobs are landed through networking, 10 to 15% through recruiters, 5% through just posting online. You never know. You could get a job by posting online. 5% of people do. You're saying there's a chance. Meryl, give me the movie. You're saying there's a chance. Or anybody can put in the chat where that's from. Anyway, Melanie, I'd love to go to those questions, please.
Okay, so Sajith had a question. Would more and more coaches use AI for more than just operations part of coaching? Any challenge you see with that strategy?
Okay, let's go back around the horn again then. Sharla, you want to start?
Yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with AI. I find it's very helpful for research. I find it's very helpful for brainstorming. And I prefer to use Claude AI for writing because mostly I'm writing marketing type documents, and that one's designed especially for marketing. Seth Godin is the one who recommended that one to me. But while it can tell a good story and it can fabricate a whole lot of things, it's not your story. So unless you really drill down deeply to find, prompt it to tell your story and the specific things about you, which I would caution you kind of not to do because of privacy reasons. I mean, you can do it in generic type terms, what are the 5 top character traits of a COO or something like that, and use that information. I find that it's driving down the perception of the value of coaching and the value of professional writing. It's garbage in, garbage out. The output that you get depends on how well you can prompt it. And if you drill down far enough and prompt it 6 or 7 times, you can get a sentence that's worth, using for the most part. Many companies, including Anthropic, which is the developer of Claude, which is, an AI system, won't accept AI-generated resumes. And you can spot them a mile away. They're very verbose. They're kind of stilted in the language, and it just doesn't sound authentic. So my take is use it as a research tool, but don't use it as a writing assistant.
Yep, I would agree with you, Sharla. I think it's there are some benefits to it, but I think the human side needs to it needs to be balanced towards the human side, or imbalanced towards the human side of things. I would agree. Alan, what about you? What's your thoughts on AI in job search?
I agree with Sharla too. The way I like to use it more is from a research perspective. I think you can also maybe tweak your resume or your LinkedIn profile. You could come up with an accomplishments statement and say, please rework this. But you don't want to have it constructed from the beginning. I think it does sound very much repetitive to like everybody else, and people complain about that, especially with cover letters too, that they keep getting the same cover letter over and over from different people. So I think, there are ways that it stands out from a negative perspective. So I think it's really helpful for research. I think you can do a little bit of tweaking with it, but you do have to have it in your own voice. And so I would say use it, but don't rely on it.
Yeah, and there is a skill to it too, asking the right questions, digging deeper, getting, exactly what you want or need out of AI. It's not, it's easy, but not that easy, if you don't ask the right prompts and all. So I think the combination of a human, a coach, and an AI can really work well too. But Melanie, what do you think?
I agree with everybody. I am a big user of AI. And one of the things, if a potential client asks me, I am very transparent. I don't use AI to write my resumes. I use AI for a lot of editing purposes. For example, there's some days you just hit that roadblock and you're like, okay, give me some, potential adverbs or verbs that I can use that I haven't already used like 5 times in this document. Give me some direction. But I think it's important to know a lot of what you guys have already said. And I've started taking some, additional courses and training and learning how to really use these tools. I primarily use ChatGPT, but to your point, Ken, it's not just we put it in and, miraculously, oh my gosh, we've gotten a perfect resume. I've had people come to me and say, hey, well, I can just have AI write my resume. And honestly, my response is, I want you to go right ahead and try that. Then we're going to talk in 6 months. Because the reality is this, it is the quality that you put in is going to equal or be less than the quality you get out. And if you already don't know what a good, solid resume should look like or with the features and traits it should have, then you're not going to be able to spot it once the tool has given you that new resume, quote unquote. So you're using that. And also the prompts aren't just like, hey, can you craft this resume? Here's the job, blah, blah, blah. You have to have an eagle eye. There's times that it goes rogue, and puts information in that doesn't apply to you. So you have to have an eagle eye for that. You have to be a strong editor. So there's all these things, but these tools are really great. And these tools can be great. And I do tell my clients all the time, we don't have to fear this as a tool, but what we have to do is learn how to use these tools. And honestly, these are things that we can take back to companies. We can take this as a skill. We can show companies how to implement them and use them in a way that now you become more valuable in that organization because you're teaching. You're applying things that you're learning and you're adapting. And so those are all the skills that we definitely want to continue to push.
Great. Yeah. I was actually helping my daughter out today with her resume, and she was helping me with AI put together some good prompts, some good questions to ask of my clients as we go through developing the resume. And I forget exactly what happened, but her response to it wasn't the right information we got back, clearly not. And she said, and that's why you always need a human working with AI. So, that's interesting. Sajid, I'd love to hear. I don't think we could get people to talk on here, can we, Melanie?
Unless we bring them through the back. But Sajid, please feel free to drop, any thoughts or anything into the chat as well. That your thoughts on this and any feedback on the comments that we had. We did have another question, and this leads into the resume, Ken. So it's good timing from Tom from Princeton. I feel like I'm on a radio talk show. I'm like, Ken, you have Tom on Princeton on the line. How do you know if your resume format will get through the ATS? So I think that's a good lead into how do we stand out with a resume.
And I love that. And I'm gonna go to Alan to start with this one. But I do want to say, I think there's an interesting paradox with resumes, or with resumes in particular. Because on one hand, your goal as a job seeker is to stand out from the crowd, right? On the other hand, you need to make it easy for the recruiter to read or the hiring manager to read. And so if you have a format that's different than they're usually just seeing, you're trying to be creative, you're trying to do things differently, that may actually work against you. So there are other ways to stand out with a resume. And I'm going to go to Alan in 1 second. But I also, Sajid, I didn't finish my thought, was that if you have any additional information about AI, because I know you are a recruiter, how you feel about it in the recruiting world and the job search world, sorry to have to ask you to type it in, but if you can or want to, that would be really great. But anyway, Alan, talking about resumes, how do you get through the ATS and or stand out from the crowd?
Yeah, there are quite a few ATS systems. I think there are, I don't know, hundreds of them. Melanie might be able to chime in if she knows an exact number, but you're not going to know exactly how each one of them is programmed or what they're looking for. So they, have knockout questions. So there are things that are can rule you out. For example, if you need an undergraduate degree and you don't show that, for example, or you need X amount of years of experience in something and you don't have that. But the way you want to have a resume for the ATS system that's one, you compare it to what the job description is, and you have to match with keywords for one thing. You want to keep the format simple. You don't want to have tables in there. You don't want to have anything in a header or a footer if you're using like a Word document. So I think simplicity is important with an ATS system. But again, I may sound like a broken record from other conversations, but I think you don't try to beat the ATS system. The best way is to not have to rely on the ATS system and to be able to get your resume to somebody who can get it to the hiring manager, so you don't have to go through and compete with, on average 250 people that are applying for a job too. So I think focusing less on trying to beat the applicant tracking system and focusing more on not needing to use the applicant tracking system. I know some people are going to say, when companies post a position, a lot of times you need to apply that way. So that's fine if you do, but that doesn't preclude you from also trying to find the hiring manager or somebody there who can email your resume or get it directly to the hiring manager. So you can do the two-pronged approach in that case too. But again, don't try to beat the system, because there's so many different systems and you're not going to know exactly all the nuances from each particular one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think too, you're right, Alan. Sometimes people try to get too cute, try to do different things to beat the system, when in fact you should just focus on presenting yourself in the best light that you can. Melanie, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes. And we actually have 22 people listening. So I just want to give a shout out to that. I think that might be our highest since transitioning to this platform. So it's what happens when the gang's all together. But and I'm also going to say Matthew and Rob, after we do this round, we'll get to your questions next as well. So yes, former recruiter, I've used tons of systems. The systems have adapted. Actually, most systems are pretty up to speed. There's a lot. I mean, here's the thing. There's a lot of misinformation about ATS systems out there. Is the process, in using them, is it perfect? No. And why is it not perfect? It's because there's still human factor in that, okay? And I think this is something really important. Does your resume need to be quote unquote ATS friendly? Yes, it does, because you do want to get it through the system. But for the most part, the only thing that doesn't go through the system is text boxes. Most systems take PDFs, Word, Google Docs. I would prefer not to put a Google Doc in, just because it doesn't always read the same way like a Word doc does. So sometimes the spacing and lines get off. So just to keep that in mind. Do you want to have keywords? Yes, but don't write just what's in the job description. Make sure that you're showing how you've done that particular task. And here's the thing that I want to remind people, and I even see a lot of career coaches. There's a lot of career coaches out there that talk about beating the ATS and whatnot. It is an electronic space to hold all of the data and the information. That's what it is. It's created because when I started recruiting, and I'm going to show my age, I walked into an office where recruiters had desks full, like empty desks covered, and the cabinets covered of resumes. Like just paper resumes. Cabinets filled with resumes. That's how, when they would get a job requisition, that's how they would use it. Like the old system was go look in their stacks of resumes for the perfect candidate. Robert Half was one of the first that created. They had their own individualized system. It was the very first system I ever was trained on. And basically you could put, and it's advanced much further since then, obviously, but basically it's, you put in the keywords and say, okay, based on these words and phrases, show me who I have in my database. And again, it's only as good as the human user. So, and that was one of the things that it's important for recruiters to put in the right data. So why does your resume need to have that? So that you do come up in those searches. Is every resume going to be seen? Probably not, because, for example, if it's an administrative assistant position, there's probably over 10,000 resumes in there. So even qualified candidates don't necessarily get seen in that. Again, it's not a perfect system, but it is a much better system than what used to exist, I can tell you that. And it is also, and I'll wrap up my point, at the end of the day, though, truly, if after the initial posting of the job and 2 to 3 days later, I would go into my system and look to see who's applied overnight. And honestly, I wouldn't put in the keywords. I would look just at their resumes and go, because it was usually a handful of candidates. It wasn't something that required, an immense amount of time for me to search. So I would just go through and look to see, okay, who's on this list that I could reach out to. And remember, hiring managers don't use ATS systems. Hiring managers, for the most part, don't even have access to the ATS system. And your resume goes to the hiring manager. So what are they reading and what are they seeing?
That's a great point, Melanie. I think really ultimately you're writing your resume for two audiences, right? You're writing for an ATS and having those keywords. And Linda, thanks for mentioning that. You do have to write your resume with the ATS in mind. But as Melanie just said, also, it's ultimately going to get to a human being. So you need to make sure that you're appealing to humans as well. Sharla, how about you? What's your take on resumes standing out from the crowd and ATS?
I too agree with everything that's said. You really want to make sure that you're leaning more towards the human connection and just optimizing your resume for, to appeal to the ATS. You want to feed it the data it craves, but the real person that you want to impress is the hiring manager. So don't keyword stuff. I also tell people, create an outcome-based resume. In other words, I want to see actionable outcomes, not just how long you worked somewhere and what your job title was, but what did you really do? How did you really make a difference? What are some of those projects that you're proud of? Show your impact. Use numbers and percentages to highlight your achievements and how they benefited the company. And write a headline connected to the job title. I saw that we had a question from someone about a headline and a branding statement on their LinkedIn profile. It also applies to your resume. Write that headline with a unique value proposition that's aligned with the employer's needs and your strengths. So you want to tell them how you can help them accomplish their mission. And then Sajid Kumar had a question about, do we use AI for back-end operations? And I do use it for sales, marketing, CRM system, kind of email automation. I also use it to research like the economic outlook of different professions, and what that, does it have a bright outlook? Is it a growing field, or is it something that may be replaced by AI, such as data entry or things like that? And even computer programming is not safe right now, unless they really go back and get up to speed on their AI skills. There still needs to be a human in the loop in computer programming, but there's going to be a need for a lot fewer computer programmers, that created code, from scratch. AI is going to be able to do a lot of that, but there still needs to be a human on the other end to see, well, is this really going to work or not?
Mm-hmm. Yep. No question about it. And that's even, again, if there are less opportunities, even more reason you need to stand out from the crowd. I'm not engaged in the chat in terms of typing in answers, but I do want you all to know I see them. Ken Dunner, I see you. Always good to have another Ken on the line, and you seem very positive and enthusiastic. Really appreciate that. Meryl and somebody else also answered, yes, Dumb and Dumber for 500. You got it right. That was, I'm glad you have as sophisticated a sense of humor as I do. and watch that movie. I've seen it way too many times. And then also there was a question about, is it wrong to have a resume online?
That one, and then I have one right before Rob's question.
Okay.
So Matthew had a question, which was the question Sharla was bringing up. So Matthew, for his LinkedIn profile, several people have said that I should have a strong headline, a strong about section. Are there examples of about sections and headlines that have been effective to see if I can compare my profile?
You know, I love that question too, because it's funny how people give you that kind of advice. I remember when I was coaching my kids in sports, like Little League, for example, and a kid would drop the ball and one of the parents would yell at, "You got to catch that ball." And I'm thinking, I always thought to myself, well, you don't think the kid knows he's got to catch the ball? How about tell him how to catch the ball? Give him some tips on how to do that better. It struck me as the same. Matthew, you got to have a strong headline and a strong about section. That's not really great advice because I'm sure you know that. So your question to find out what does that look like? Or what does that sound like? I think is a great one. And I guess we should start with you, Melanie, the LinkedIn queen for this one. You want to give us a start?
Yeah, so Matthew, it is to Ken's point. Yes, it's hard to know like what is a strong headline, what is a strong about section. I'll start with the headline. Headline is not just title at your company. It's not just title. It's not I am looking for or I help people. I personally, with my job seekers, like to start off with a position title that you're seeking, and then have some sort of branding statement or statement about like what do you do, what problem do you solve, what are another examples you guys can pop in here too, but so what problems do you solve, things along those lines. Now I want you to flip the switch here, and this is something I do with my coaching, and I always tell people I'm going to have you think like a recruiter. So what's a recruiter going to look for when they're looking to find that right person? Are those keywords in your headline? Now, it doesn't have to just be a headline full of keywords. It can have, them weaved into it. But if you have, like, for example, certifications that are related to your field, definitely include them there. You'll see the little pipe a lot of times. One of the things I would suggest you do, now I'm going to tell you this exercise, and I'm going to tell you one thing, 90% of the profiles you see will not have any of these things in there. So you're going to probably find more profiles of what not to do than what is correct, based on my experience. But specific certifications, if I'm looking, look at the jobs. Now, this is an example where a ChatGPT could come in really handy of asking, based on these 3 job descriptions, what are the keywords that I would potentially use in my headline on LinkedIn based on my specific experience, and sharing your resume. So again, a very specific prompt because you're asking it to look at multiple things, but start finding those words that are going to pop. And that's a good way to start with your headline. Most people do not utilize the headline fully when it comes to their LinkedIn profile. They usually just maybe name a position and leave it at that. That's great. But for example, if you're administrative assistant or project manager, and I'm scrolling, and remember, and I think Linda brought this, Linda and I were on another call in another community, and we were talking about this. Less than 3% of recruiters, I think that's the statistic, Linda, if you're listening, you can correct me on that, actually use LinkedIn Recruiter, which is the recruiting platform in the back. I didn't actually have it when I was a recruiter because it's really expensive. And most companies do not like to invest in recruiters. And so I was finding my candidates organically. And organically is just the same way you or Ken or Charlotte, any of us could go and do a search. So think about what people are searching. Search for people with the same titles you are and see what they have in their profile. Now, with the about section, it is not, please, this is the one thing I will tell you again not to do. It is not just a copy and paste of your resume summary. Please don't do that. You have an ability to tell a story. You get to tell us what you've done, how you've done it, what you've achieved, to give us some statistics. Put a little personality in there. We don't have to be so, straight-laced and in the box with that. Show us a little bit of that personality. Tell us something about yourself at that. You have the space or the real estate to explain your history. You have the opportunity to tell us the types of roles you're looking for and who you want to connect with. It's not just a replica of your resume. And also, Matthew, if you want to check out, I will go look for it. Or actually, Meryl, if you want to go to my, Meryl is my godsend, by the way. If people are like, she's bossing Meryl around. If you go to my profile under my newsletters, it's the one that says we're not twins, or resume and LinkedIn aren't, they're not twins, but they're like cousins, basically. So, and Meryl can probably drop that in the chat for us. But I talk about your LinkedIn profile and how to adapt that. So there's some examples that should be in there of what to do for both of those.
Great. What did you
now,
say?
If I have Meryl racing off to go find. Yes.
How did you describe Meryl? What did you say your relationship?
Meryl is like my right hand. He knows that I cannot. He knows that I cannot multitask when I'm on these calls.
Well, Meryl's amazing. I think Meryl's great. He always adds so much to our calls. So
I'm literally like, I don't know what I would do if I didn't have Meryl like on these calls, being able to go, yeah, I'm gonna go off and go find that newsletter for you, Mel. So I think it was 2 weeks ago that I did it. I know it wasn't last week, but because last week was about connections. I think it was the week before that.
Well, okay. Well, that's good. I have very high regard for Meryl also. And Ken, I have very high regard for Ken's as well. Excellent description of how we at least hope to present ourselves in the world. So thank you. Excellent response, Melanie. Do appreciate that. Let's go to Sharla. Sharla, you want to give another take on that?
Yeah, I think you need to have a consistency in your brand, your identity across all your documents. So, this is a good time to think about. I do a brainstorming exercise with my clients, and I give them a fill in the blank kind of a sentence, and I help them create a value proposition for each aspect of their role, whether it's operations management or leading technology initiatives, whatever it is, we craft a value statement for that. And then 9 times out of 10, I'm going to combine the top 3 into one that I will use on LinkedIn. I will use a different version that says, similarly worded, but slightly different in the resume. And then that's the theme that I carry through in the cover letter. So your LinkedIn profile is more of a chance for someone to get to know you. It's a first person narrative that is your career story. And only you know your story. I would caution you not to start with an origin story of, I was born in, unless it's something that really resonates. Start in the middle of your story. If you have a bunch of experience, probably your early experience isn't as important as what you're doing now. So start in the middle of an action. That's kind of a literary, writing technique. And then make sure that you're the same person. Don't be a nonfiction writer in one profile, and then, in your LinkedIn profile, and then, you're looking for an operations manager role on your resume. They have to tell the same story. They can show different aspects of who you are. I mean, if you're doing that and writing is one of your strengths, but if it's something weird like you're an accountant, but you're also a music teacher, maybe you need 2 resumes for that. But if your main objective is to find a job in accounting, then your musical ability becomes just a fun fact to know about you. It shouldn't drive the the resume, and it shouldn't drive the LinkedIn profile. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Sharla. I think it's, again, excellent advice. And I'm Rob Rupaski. I want to make sure we're going to answer your question. But I do need a little clarification first. You ask, is it wrong to have resume active on LinkedIn while you already have a full-time job? Can you just clarify in the chat what you mean by having a resume active on LinkedIn? So, and then after I give my quick response here about LinkedIn, we'll definitely make sure we answer your question before we close out this evening. And so for me, from a headline point of view for LinkedIn, there are two things I think about. The first one is, what words would a recruiter use if they were searching for a job? What words would they put into the LinkedIn search bar? So for me, or if anybody was searching for someone, for me, I have executive coach, career coach, keynote speaker, author. Those are the four things I have. Because if someone's looking for a career coach, I'm pretty sure they're going to put career coach in the LinkedIn search bar. If they're looking for an executive coach, same thing, right? So to me, that's the first place to start. And I would test it. Put those words that you want to use in the search bar. And then you could look at two things. First, you could filter by jobs and see, are there a decent amount of jobs that show up with that term? And secondly, are they the kinds of job you would be interested in? And if, for the most part, it's not going to be 100%. And if they are jobs you're interested in, and there are a good amount of them, then it's probably a good word to have in your headline. Because if I'm a recruiter, again, if I'm looking for a project manager, I'm probably going to put project manager in the LinkedIn search bar if I'm using LinkedIn. So I would think if you're a project manager, you want to have that as one of your terms. And then the second part of the headline, I usually try to get a short, very quick, this is who I am, this is my personal brand, this is what I do, so that it makes it very clear to someone what they're getting if they give you a call or want to talk to you. And then the other point I was going to make about the about section is that in the about section, there are only 4 lines that show up, right? Until someone hits the see more button. So whatever you write, you got to make sure it's compelling and interesting and enough that someone says, man, I got to read more. I'm going to click that see more button. For me personally, I like to end with something like, if they just describe what they do, for example, ... to make someone say, I want to see what those examples are. And then I give 3 good bullet points, examples of what my clients have delivered in the past, so that anyone reading it would know what they would get from that person. So that would be that for me. I don't see any further clarification from Bob. So,
I see it. It's at the bottom. He's asking, I think his question is basically of him putting his resume on his LinkedIn profile for anyone to see it.
Yeah, Melanie, I know you have feelings about that one, don't you?
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you this, Rob. As a former recruiter, the recruiter in me loved when people did that. Why? Because I could just look at it and go, okay, do I see what I need? Yes or no? Probably eliminate a lot of people that I, didn't necessarily see what quote unquote I was looking for. As a coach, I don't like people doing that. Here's the reason: is the reason I just gave, because I want a recruiter, a hiring manager to reach out to you. I want them to say, hey, I see enough. You want your profile to show me enough that I say, let's have a conversation and let's dig a little bit deeper. Because the thing is, we want to give them that reason to have a conversation with you. And honestly, I can't talk. Most of the time, I may come across your LinkedIn profile before I'd ever see your resume. So don't give everything all at once. I think also, too, if you're currently employed, you do have to be mindful of what message that sends to your employer. And we're in a world today that employment is very fluid in a lot of industries. So we need to be mindful of what that might imply. And, when it comes down to decision making, things of that nature. But I personally I do not encourage my clients to put their resumes up on LinkedIn. You can put other things like in your featured section, such as like a quick video just introducing yourself. You can also do like a highlight reel, just of like, a one sheet of like highlights and accomplishments of achievements you've had in this particular industry and field. There's a lot of different things you can do besides putting a resume up there. Again, getting that attention for other things that people maybe aren't. And I can tell you right now, people are not doing either of those examples.
Great. And thank you, Melanie, for reinforcing that, because I every now and then I see it and I cringe, but I also think about you, Melanie. I think, what would Melanie think if she saw this? So,
well, the recruiter Melanie would have loved it. Okay, I loved it when the candidates did it. It made my job way easier.
Yeah, that's right. But it also reinforces the message, though, that whether it's your resume or your LinkedIn profile, your goal is not. I mean, nobody's going to read your LinkedIn profile, your resume, and say, call you up and say, I want to offer you a job. It's not going to happen. Your goal, as Melanie kind of described, is to pique their interest enough that they call you, and then you have an opportunity to really sell yourself, to really come across. So if you give your resume up on LinkedIn, you could miss that opportunity. We're coming towards the top of the hour, so I'm going to ask, this time I want to ask about interviews, and as part of your closing statement. And so I'm going to ask if you could tell us how to stand out in interviews from the crowd, and then also how our listeners can get in touch with you if they'd like to talk further about their job search or their career. So Alan, how about we'll start with you. Give us a great interview tip to stand out, and then let people know how to get in touch with you.
Before the interview tip, I just wanted to mention what Linda had mentioned in the chat also, that you don't want to put your resume on LinkedIn because we recommend that you customize it for each one of the jobs you're going for. And so you can't customize it if you just have one resume that's kind of a master resume that's up there. Two, it can also be something that a recruiter could take and send out, on your behalf without you even knowing about it. So I don't recommend it at all. I think it's not a good strategy to use for those reasons, as well as some of the other things that were mentioned. As far as standing out on the interview, you really have to do your research and your homework and really understand what are the pain points, what's most important to the company that's looking to hire you. So that's one of the things I was doing with a client this past week. We were looking at, he had an interview coming up. So I said, send me the job requisition. Let's take a look at it. And we really analyzed it and scrutinized it. And we saw some of the same words coming up in many different areas of the job description. So it really sounded like those were some things that were really key to what they were looking for. So I think it's really important to do as much research as you can, evaluate that job description, also get to know the people that you're going to be interviewing with, do research on them, do research on the company, and make the interview a conversation. Try to ask questions early in the conversation, so you don't wait till the end where they say, do you have any questions? You want to find out as much as you can about what's most important to them. What are their pain points? What are they looking for somebody to accomplish at the beginning of their tenure in that job? What are the most important things? So you can tailor your answers to that. The best way to reach me would be on LinkedIn. You can mention that we met through this forum, and would be glad to connect. And if I can help you in any way, would love to do that as well. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Alan, again, for great contributions tonight, and also for your support of Linda's statement as well about not putting a resume on LinkedIn because you can't customize it that way. So that's a great point. Also, I think your comment about research, I mean, all the information is there. If you know who the interviewer is, you can find out more about them on LinkedIn. You can research the company. You can find people to talk to about the job. And there's just, I would have to say, shame on you if you don't do your research to make yourself know a little bit more about the company, the job, etc. It really can make a difference. Sometimes people say, well, if I look at someone's LinkedIn profile, won't they think I'm stalking them? I don't know. I personally feel like if you frame it as I've done my research, to me, that sends a great message that you're really prepared and you prepare yourself for a situation. So, Alan, thank you again for being here. Thanks for that great info. Sharla, how about you?
Yeah, I want to take this in a little different direction. I just read a research report from hunter.co. They just published it. It's called the Job Search Trends Report for Q2 of 2025. And it analyzed like 461,000 applications, 285 job ads, 59,000 resumes. And then they also conducted a respondent survey of about 450 people. And the survey showed that the time to hire is now taking about 68 days. And so candidates are waiting also nearly twice as long after an interview. They said an average of 11 days before they hear back. So you might want to wait maybe 7 days before you send that follow-up message to give them time to work through their process. And so from the time they get your resume and they decide they're going to interview, you usually interview, and that takes another 6 days. And so if you understand how that process works, then you'll have a better sense of timing as to when to follow up. And actually, the survey also showed that Google Jobs has a 9.3% response rate to applications. And I had not been using Google Jobs, but on regular job boards, it's 2 to 3% of a response rate. So if you can get a 9% response rate, that's actually pretty good. That's about 3 times higher than LinkedIn has about a 3.3 response rate to applications. So know that it is going to be a numbers game, and why you want to hop off the job boards and really, work your network. And as far as, standing out, you want to make sure that your positioning statement is aligned with the job. Don't use your old job title. Use a future-focused job title in your headline, so people clearly know that this is a marketing document. This is the job that you're going for. And if you don't feel comfortable using the exact job title because you haven't held it, you can say healthcare informatics executive or something like that. Giving a description of the job you're not implying that you've already held that job. You're implying that you want the recruiter to know this is the job you're applying for, is what I'm trying to say. So, the key is, get creative a little bit to demonstrate those job relevant skills. Your success relies on giving substantive information and smart differentiation. What is it about you that makes you different from the others? What is the unique value that only you can bring to this organization? That's what's going to make you stand out from, generic resumes, bland LinkedIn profiles. And if you can do that, your chances of success, increase exponentially, I think. So don't just set it and forget it. Experiment a little bit. You might try, changing up that headline and do some A/B testing, see which one works the best. And I'd love to, I think all of us here on this call offer a, 20, 30-minute free discovery call. And, I encourage you to, take me up on it. I'll give you some strategy to, help you. If you get one little tip, it's worth your 20 minutes of time. I don't think any of us on this call are high pressure salespersons. We're in it to help you. And the best way to reach me is either on LinkedIn or through my website, writtenbyapro.com.
Great. Thank you, Charlotte. Excellent advice all the way through. And I think really if I were to sum it up in one word, also it's authenticity. You talk about just be yourself, but obviously you got to get your message across and not try to think too crazy. So thanks for that. Glad you were here, Sharla. Great insights all evening. Thank you. And Melanie, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to interviewing, I mean, honestly, it's tried and true. It's practicing. Um, you're not, interviewing left and right, and even if you're in the thick of a job search, there's probably questions that trigger like stress, like if you think of that. And truthfully, one of the things that I think is really important is doing some like doing some breathing exercises before the interview starts. I think that one of the things you want to relax your mind, you want to go in and be very confident. And, one of the biggest tips, honestly, I give to people is I want you to tell me your cutoff time the night before. I want you to get a good night's sleep. I want you to have your outfit picked out, and I want you to like basically log off. You need to relax and not stress about the questions. Sometimes, we've gone to school and we've crammed for that test. The fact is, our brains need to rest, and the person that comes in rested, relaxed, and confident is honestly, if you've ever seen that person that you're like, how the heck did they land that job? 9 times out of 10, it's the confidence. And there's a difference between confidence and being cocky, but it's really just like, no, I truly believe that I have that ability to be able to solve this problem or do X, Y, and Z. So I think it's really important to always be practicing questions. There's no new interview questions out there, but also make sure that you give yourself the time to come relax before your interview the night before, so you're not super stressed. And of course, you guys can find me on LinkedIn. You can connect with me there. Yeah, feel free to reach out and connect. And of course, if there's other topics or conversations you like us to cover, let us know.
Great. Thank you, Melanie. And as always, excellent information. Great tips for everybody. Hopefully you took notes and will follow along. And as for me, I guess my comment will be around resumes. And I would say if you look at the bullet points on your resume, ask yourself this. Is this something that is unique to me, or can anybody say this? Because the bullet points of your resume need to differentiate you, right? You start with a responsibility statement that just describes the role objectively, but those bullet points are where you show how you impacted the job. What results did you deliver? And if you look at it and think, oh man, anybody can say it, then it's probably not a strong enough statement for you. So that's one thing to consider when you look at your resume. And then with interviewing, also, actually, I would say, Alan, I think you made some great points. If you're asking questions along the way, that shows confidence. That shows you are really interviewing them as well, and you don't want to just jump at whatever is available. You really want to learn about it. But also always make sure you have 1 or 2 questions at the end, because you want to, it's just a good way to end the interview. And then my last tip on interviewing is I always like to coach my clients to say, yeah, because there's something called the primacy recency effect. People remember most what you say first and last. So I always coach them to say, thanks for the time. I'm really excited about the opportunity. Please remember about me that, and then deliver your personal branding message. Like, give a strong statement at the end about who you are, because that's most likely one of the things they're going to remember about you. Anyway, great to be back, everybody. Thank you for an excellent show. I think it was a great show. Thanks to everybody in the chat who contributed, who asked questions. You guys are great. Please share that we're here. One thing about LinkedIn to make yourself stand out is to post, repost, comment. So if you really like the show and you got something out of it, please post about it so other people might join us in 2 weeks. So thank you again, Sharla, Melanie, Alan, and again to all our listeners. I hope you all have a great couple of weeks till we speak with you again. And until then, be well and take care. Good night, everybody.